Good morning, members of the committee. I call this meeting of the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry to order. This morning, we welcome Governor Sonny Purdue, the President's nominee for U.S. Secretary of Agriculture. Members of this committee have great appreciation for the farmers, ranchers, and consumers and other stakeholders that are directly affected by decisions made by the Secretary. The Department of Agriculture is made up of 29 agencies and offices. It employs nearly 100,000 men and women that work in all 50 states and all around the globe. The department provides leadership on food, agriculture, natural resources, rural development, nutrition, scientific research, and related issues that impact Americans virtually every day. Throughout our nation's history, our farmers, ranchers, and folks in rural America have survived drought, disease, floods, tornadoes, and lately, prairie fires in Kansas, and whatever else Mother Nature throws at them. Year after year, they produce the safest, most abundant, and affordable food and fiber supply in the world. However, today, growers from across the country are facing tough economic times with multiple years of low prices. These same producers need a strong market for their goods. During this critical time, the importance of trade for agriculture, our agriculture industry, cannot be overstated. And if that was not enough, over the previous years, farmers and ranchers and rural businesses have been burdened by regulations from agencies all across the federal government. I have heard time and time again, as well as many members of this committee, about the costly and hard-to-understand regulations that endanger the ability of our producers to simply stay in business. This committee will continue its efforts to make government a partner in their success, not an adversary. And this committee has a lot of work to do over the next 2 years, including the reauthorization of the Farm Bill. We intend to do that work in the bipartisan fashion that has served us so well in the past. In this respect, I want to personally thank the distinguished ranking member and former chairperson of this committee, the Senator from Michigan. Now more than ever, agriculture needs a voice, an advocate at the highest levels of government. And Governor Purdue has been nominated to serve in exactly that role. He is from Georgia and has spent his entire life in and around agriculture. The governor was raised on a farm and was a practicing veterinarian before returning to his home county to work in the grain business. He was elected to serve in local and state government, including 2 terms as governor of Georgia. While serving farmers throughout the Southeast, he gained firsthand experience with the complexity of transportation and the global commodities market. Governor, the Senate's role of advice and consent is an important responsibility, and today is a key step in that process. We look forward to hearing your testimony and to asking you questions about how you view the role of Agriculture Secretary should you be confirmed. In addition to the governor, I would also like to welcome and recognize his wife, Mary, his 4 children and their spouses, and his 14 grandchildren. The governor is also joined by so many of his friends and former staff from Georgia we can't count them. We welcome you all to the committee. And I am especially glad to have our former Ag Committee Chairman and Senator from Georgia, the Honorable Saxby Chambliss, and Georgia Congressman David Scott, who serves on the House Agriculture Committee, the sometimes powerful House Agriculture Committee, with us to provide introductions of our nominee, and I see Congressman Sanford Bishop here in the audience to support the nominee as well. Sanford, it's good to see you again. But before we hear from Senator Chambliss and Congressman Scott, I want to turn things over to Senator Stabenow for any remarks that the distinguished ranking member would like to make.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's great to be with you today as we're moving forward on this very important position, and welcome, Governor Purdue, and it's pretty impressive. So you've got some beautiful grandchildren as well as children and family members, and we know that you're proud of your grandpa, and we're happy to have you all here today. And to my friend Senator Chambliss, we worked on a lot of farm bills together and worked well, and thank you for your service as chair and as somebody advocating for Georgia and all of the interests in agriculture. It's great to see you. And Representative Scott, welcome as well. And we've got a lot of work together with our colleagues in the House to be able to get the next farm bill done. So we look forward to doing that. It's clear that agriculture and rural America need to have a seat at the table. We always do, but it's clear that we need to make sure that's happening with this administration. Looking back at our history, our presidents knew that farmers were the foundation of the country. That's why President Lincoln created the USDA and called it the People's Department, because he understood that agriculture is a cornerstone of our economy and that the department had a special relationship with the people it served. America's farmers and ranchers grow the safest, most affordable food supply in the world, and we should be very proud of that. I always say that food security is national security, because having a food secure nation makes our country safe. Our food and agriculture sector also supports 16 million American jobs. It's USDA's job to ensure we can continue to make things and grow things in every state. And that means celebrating the diversity of American agriculture as well. Michigan is the second most diverse agricultural state in the country. And it's important that USDA is a voice for Michigan farmers, as well as Kansas, as well as Georgia, and all of those across our country. Large and small, conventional and organic, those who sell overseas, those who sell to their neighbors. We need a voice for all of our farmers. An agriculture secretary will need to look past regional divides and partisan pressures to support all farmers, all families, and rural communities. And right now, we need an advocate to stand up for them with this administration. USDA not only helps a farmer weather storms, they also save communities from wildfires in the West, help to make lakes and rivers safe for families to enjoy, and ensure children have the healthy food they need to learn and grow to be healthy adults. Rural America is the economic backbone of our country, and it's true that too many rural towns are still struggling to recover from the Great Recession. Over the past 8 years, USDA has made targeted investments in rural economies, and now we're beginning to see these communities on the road to recovery. But we need to make sure that these important investments continue so we can keep moving forward. Unfortunately, during the 2 months of the administration, it's clear that rural America has been an afterthought. Even before President Trump took office, he sent a message by waiting until the last minute to name his pick for Agriculture Secretary. Last week's budget proposal has made it clear that rural America is not a top priority for this administration. The proposal cuts USDA funding by 21%, the third largest cut to any federal agency. In addition to eliminating critical rural development and international food aid programs, the administration has put a target on hundreds of critical programs that go through the appropriations process. In fact, under the budget, important resources for farmers and families are facing cuts averaging 33%. We need a Secretary of Agriculture who will advocate for the important services USDA provides and rural families and farmers need. We need a strong voice to insist that the President listen to the 500 groups that are saying that agriculture, conservation, food assistance, and other Farm Bill programs should not be cut further after agreeing to a $23 billion cut in the last Farm Bill. We also need someone who will partner closely with Congress, especially as we put together the next Farm Bill and look at other key issues like immigration and trade that have a tremendous impact on farmers and rural communities. In the 2014 Farm Bill, we made bipartisan reforms that saved taxpayers billions and protected the integrity of the Farm and Family Safety Net. The Congressional Budget Office recently estimated that the current Farm Bill, if we did no changes, would save $80 billion more than initially projected in the next 10 years, largely driven by crop insurance costs going down and reduced spending on food assistance as the economy has improved. In this Congress, we will be working hard to move another bipartisan farm bill. I'm excited for this challenge, Mr. Chairman. With the USDA leadership, with all of our stakeholders, I know that we can get it done. We've worked together before on a comprehensive bill. We will do it again for the communities that we represent and for the entire country. Especially during these times of low prices for agriculture and uncertainty around the budget, trade, and immigration, we need the next secretary to be an unapologetic advocate for all of rural America. We need someone who will be tenacious, much like a Georgian bulldog. Governor Purdue, we need a champion, and I know you know that right now more than ever. Today, I look forward to learning more about your views and qualifications to lead one of the most important departments in our federal government. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the senator from Michigan. It is my privilege and pleasure now to recognize the distinguished former member of this committee and chairman of this committee, our colleague, our friend, the Honorable Saxby Chambliss.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Stabenow, distinguished members of the committee, I am truly honored to be before you today, and I'm humbled to be on this side of the dais, but glad to be on this side for a number of reasons. But I'm particularly pleased and honored to be here today to introduce my good friend, Governor George Irvin Sonny Purdue, who is President Trump's nominee to be the next Secretary of Agriculture. You know, I spent 12 of the best years of my life right here, and when people ask me what do I miss the Senate, I'm very quick to respond that what I miss are the good friends that I made over my 20 years in Congress. And members of this committee are right at the top of the list of those best friends, and it's on both sides of the aisle, so I truly am pleased to be here. When I was sworn in as a new member of the House of Representatives in January of 1995, I was given the next to the last seat on that committee, which was made up of more than 50 members. The chairman of that committee was the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Roberts. Now, Mr. Chairman, you're probably the only person in the history of our country to chair both committees. And I'm going to steal your phrase because I've heard you say it so often, that the sometimes powerful Ag Committee. But you're to be congratulated for having the honor of chairing both committees. Governor Sonny Purdue is no stranger to agriculture. Sonny grew up on a farm in Houston County, Georgia, graduated from the veterinary school at the University of Georgia, and after a tour in the Air Force, returned to Houston County to be actively engaged in row crop farming, as well as in the operation of a very successful grain elevator business. When I was elected to Congress, Sonny was a constituent of mine and was by that time in his life a member of the Georgia State Senate. Now, Houston County is the home of Robins Air Force Base. So Sonny and I shared the interest of defense as well as agriculture in our respective positions, and we began a dialogue that has lasted to this day. In 2002, Sonny decided to run for governor of Georgia, and I decided to run for the United States Senate. And needless to say, we spent many hours campaigning over the next year prior to that election. And when you eat a lot of fried chicken and a lot of barbecue and ride a bus with somebody for a long period of time, you get to know them, and I got to know Sonny well. That November, Sonny was elected as the first Republican governor in our state in 130 years. Sonny's been a leader in everything he's been involved in doing. As a farmer, he was a leader in the field of agribusiness in our state. As a member of the state Senate, he was elected by his peers to be the president pro tem of the Senate. And as governor, he was the chairman of the Republican Governors Association. When he was elected governor, Sonny did what good leaders do, and that is to surround himself with good people. He went out and found a very experienced CEO and a very experienced CFO. He also improved the state's leadership by implementing a meritocracy in that he went out and found the very best and most qualified people to run every one of our state agencies, irrespective of the political affiliation of those individuals. He committed to make Georgia the best managed state in the nation, and he received significant national recognition for his accomplishments. When he was elected, the state couldn't produce an audit, so he created the first state accounting office to focus on the timeliness and usefulness of financial information. Technology and purchasing systems at the state level were antiquated. Under Sonny's leadership, those systems were updated, and the state purchasing system has received many awards for its efficiency and accountability. A new state data center was established, and much of the appropriate technology was outsourced in order to stay current and technologically state-of-the-art. Now, we all know that technology at USDA today is way behind the curve, it's inefficient, and it is not farmer-friendly. This will be a challenge to Sonny, but I am very confident that he will be up to that challenge. One of Sonny's most significant initiatives was the customer service focus to treat citizens of our state as customers and to create services for them that were faster, friendlier, and easier. That initiative significantly reduced the time and improved the customer experience in everything from getting a driver's license to getting a tax refund. It also produced a cultural change as state employees bought into this initiative. Such an effort at USDA would be a vast improvement in the relationship with Washington and its largest customers at USDA, farmers and ranchers. This kind of executive experience and leadership, combined with Sonny's knowledge of USDA programs, make him ideally suited to be the next Secretary of Agriculture. And Mr. Chairman, I would urge this committee to approve his nomination and bring his confirmation to a vote on the floor of the Senate as soon as possible. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Chambliss, for an excellent statement in behalf of the governor. It is also my personal pleasure and privilege to introduce a member of the House Agriculture Committee, a very valuable member, Congressman David Scott. David, we're delighted to have you here in the upper body. We won't go any farther with that. Please proceed, sir.
Chairman Roberts, thank you for that, but I do want to make one slight correction. When you said that our House of Agriculture was sometimes influential and powerful, maybe add an addendum to that so it will go out that the House Agriculture Committee has always been and will always be powerful and influential.
I appreciate that correction. It just was only one chairman that had the tenure when it was sometimes powerful.
Touche, my friend. I will certainly take that in consideration. Chairman Roberts, I am greatly honored and very thankful to have this opportunity to come and stand with my dear friend, my longtime friend, Sonny Purdue. I want to just take a few minutes to share with you some things about Sonny that you need to know. My good friend, Senator Secretary Chambliss, went into great detail to share with you his immense qualifications, his education, the fact that he went to the University of Georgia's veterinarian school. But I'm here to explain to you why Sonny Purdue is indeed the right person at the right time to do the absolute best job. The talents that I have shared and have witnessed with him in coming up through Georgia State Senate. You see, committee members, I was chairman of the Senate Rules Committee in Georgia for 10 years, first African American to get that position. My good friend Sonny Purdue was the president pro tem of the Senate. Now, I'm not saying that to just shake a bell on our credentials here, but I think that if you put that in the context of the Georgia legislature, and I assure you that Georgia legislature was one of the most exciting places to be every 40 days that went on for almost 80 days. Now, Sonny and I had to meet every single day to work together, to set the agenda, to determine what bills got onto the floor in the House and the Senate, sometimes night after night. And when we did that, we had to also sit with the governor and the speaker. And you talk about some fireworks, there were plenty in that Georgia legislature. But you get to understand a person's temperament when you're on the battlefield with them, their courage, their decisiveness. And Sonny Purdue was just such a person. And so on all of the major pieces of legislation that affected every Georgian, of every stripe, of every condition, Sonny Purdue had a very integral part of that. And so I want to take just a few minutes, if I may, because what's important to me is to make sure that my friend Sonny Purdue becomes the Secretary of Agriculture very quickly, and that he comes with his record unblemished. That's why I wanted you to know at the outset, ladies and gentlemen, Sonny Purdue and I worked into the midnight hours, night after night. You get to know a person. He and I were like brothers, and I am grateful for that relationship. I want to take just a minute, though, to address an issue that I don't know may or may not come up. But I think I would be derelict in my duty if I did not set the record straight on the Confederate battle flag business that has been in the air. I want to make sure that when you measure Sonny Purdue on that issue as well as all issues, that you measure Sonny Purdue right. Now, let me just give the committee and the nation just a preview and a setting. First of all, Sonny Purdue and I came along at a very significant time when Georgia made one of its most historic moments in changing the Confederate battle flag emblem from our state flag. It took time, it took experience, it took talent, and it also took, committee members, God's providence, his divine intervention at a very critical need when we needed it most. And because of leadership at that time, there were 3 governors. You can't just tell the story with just one governor. This has been an ongoing process. And it took education, it took commitment, but the people of Georgia, black and white, rose to that occasion. I want to just state that the first governor that had the courage to step forward to change that Confederate battle flag was Zell Miller, one of your former colleagues here. That took courage. And Zell paid the price for that. But it's very important to know that it was the white leadership in Georgia that stepped forward to lead that fight, took great risks to do so. Then there was the second governor, Governor Roy Barnes. And as I said, God puts the right people in the right place at the right time. And Governor Roy Barnes, one of the most courageous governors, a man of sterling strength, chose to do it. And he put forward the new flag. And he too, and let me tell you something, committee members, many of those senators, and state representatives, when they stood up to vote for that, many knew that they were not coming back because they were defeated. We have to measure people correctly. And they built on the foundation that each one laid. And then came Sonny Purdue. The flag issue was in his lap. It was on everybody's mind. So when you judge a person, you have to judge them based upon the circumstances that he was placed in. Sonny Purdue, let it be known, when he was elected governor, he put forward a referendum. It was a tremendous campaign. Governor Roy Barnes lost the governorship for that. Many members of the House and the Senate lost their positions for that. And they deserve to be pointed out, respected for that. They paid the price. And when it came time and Sonny was elected, he promised a referendum because the people of Georgia, it was their decision to make. But you talk about brilliance, you talk about achievement in a tough area. Sonny Purdue negotiated the compromise and put together the referendum and gave the people a choice. And he put Governor Barnes's flag there, which had a small emblem of the Confederate battle flag on there. And then Governor Sonny Purdue did a tremendously smart thing. He got an agreement on another flag that did not have the battle flag emblem on it. And he put that flag there with Georgia's state seal. And he said, people of Georgia, choose which one. And you know what, Chairman and committee members? The people of Georgia chose the one flag that Sonny Purdue provided the leadership that did not have the small Confederate flag that Roy Barnes had. And we didn't get to that point easily, but it was a great moment for the white and black people of Georgia. And it could not have happened if we didn't have a person with a level-headedness, with the brilliance and the tactical maneuvering, the willingness to sit and bring together Democrats, Republicans, urban and rural, together to solve that and let the people solve it. I often refer to that experience, Chairman and committee members. I call you your reference 3 people. God chose 3 people to get us to the promised land. Jacob, which was our Zell Miller, because Zell Miller had to go up and wrestle with this issue. And then came our Moses, Roy Barnes, who provided the leadership right to it. But then we had our Joshua that got us on across the Jordan River. With that, Mr. Chairman, I urge you with all speed and urgency to please confirm my good friend, a great Georgian and a good American, a great American, who will make one of the best secretaries of agriculture this nation has had, Sonny Purdue. Thank you.
Congressman, thank you for that very inspiring endorsement. I think every member here, if they would like to be endorsed for anything, would welcome you to do that. That was very special, and I appreciate it very much. Governor?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, pardon me. Senator Purdue would like to have the opportunity to endorse Governor Purdue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I promise to be brief. As it's been stated,
You take all the time you want. You were waving your arms, and I couldn't see you over there.
I just want to make a brief statement. As it's been stated, Governor Purdue and I are first cousins. We grew up together. We have a strong family. It's an extended family. I know this man all my life, and I can think of no one in the United States more qualified to be the next Secretary of Agriculture. You know, Representative Scott in Joshua calls us to be strong and courageous. I know this man to be both strong and courageous. Today, he's going to answer all our questions, and the only thing I can say to him is, good luck, cuz.
Governor Purdue, would you please rise and raise your right hand, please, sir? First, do you swear that the testimony you are about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And second, do you agree that if confirmed, you will appear before any duly constituted committee of Congress if asked to appear?
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you. Please proceed now with your testimony, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Chairman Roberts and Ranking Member Stabenow and distinguished members of the committee. It's an honor to be with all of you here today as the President's nominee to serve as the nation's 31st Secretary of Agriculture. Before I go any further, I want to thank both of my good friends and fellow Georgians, both Saxby Chambliss and David Scott, for their words of encouragement and inspiration to me as well, Mr. Chairman. And also I want to thank my good friend Sanford Bishop, Congressman Sanford Bishop, whom we served in the state Senate together as well, for being here this morning also. I know from visiting from many of you in your offices, there was some anxiety over whether there would be a Secretary of Agriculture nominee, and I must say, with all the humility I can muster, I think the President must have saved the best for last. I'd like to thank each of you for making time to meet individually with me over the last few weeks, and I hope and trust that our meetings will not just be introductory episodes, but an ongoing opportunity to listen and to learn from one another. My goal today is to answer your questions transparently. Your satisfaction, not only to earn your affirmative vote, but your trust. And if you will afford me the opportunity, I will carry out this awesome job with integrity, complicit with the laws and policies that set forth by Congress, and with the compassion of a golden rule heart. Before I get started, though, I'd like to take a moment to introduce my family members who are with me here today. I'm accompanied by my lively wife, Mary, over my left shoulder. I had no idea when I married her 44 years ago she would be such a prolific grandmother. As you can see, seated with Mary are our 4 children and 14 grandchildren, and who are more familiar with my being called Big Buddy rather than any fancy other titles. So I'm also pleased and frankly humbled after 7 years to have more than 30 of my former co-workers here who labored side by side with me while serving the state of Georgia and its people.
Governor, could you, pardon this interruption, we'd like for your family and your co-workers to stand, if you would, please.
Please.
Thank you all for being here.
Good-looking crowd, if I say so myself. You read my bio and poured over my personal and professional history, but if you'll indulge me today, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about myself. As a youngster growing up on a dairy farm and a diversified row crop farm in the middle of Georgia, I never really fully realized the blessings of purposeful, meaningful work would serve me as well as they have in my life. When I was a young boy feeding the calves and plowing the fields, I was an integral part of the workforce there on our family's farm. My mother was an English teacher for 42 years.
Governor, if you would just cease for a moment, and we'll take care of this problem. Please proceed, Governor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My mother was also an English teacher for 42 years, so I benefited from her teachings as well, not just by raising me with the beliefs that I hold dear to my heart today, but being an English teacher, she also made sure I knew about dangling participles. It was a great life, and I had a blessed upbringing with wonderful memories. My favorite hobbies as a youngster were playing Little League baseball, training bird dogs, and riding my horse Trigger. Even as a youngster, I was determined and goal-oriented. Early on, I set my heart on becoming a veterinarian, having been influenced by Dr. Davis, a kind and gentle veterinarian who cared for our dairy herd. So after high school, I enrolled at the University of Georgia, where I walked on to play football for the University of Georgia Bulldogs, Senator. Play's probably not the operative word, but I was on the team. Realizing that my future was not on the football field, I decided to apply myself to my studies. As I entered veterinary school in 1967, you may remember Vietnam was roiling, so I signed up for an early commissioning program in the United States Air Force. As I finished my veterinary education in 1971, I was assigned to Columbus, Ohio as base veterinarian, whose primary responsibilities were food safety, public health, and sanitation. As I completed my active duty commitment, I joined a small animal veterinary practice in Raleigh, North Carolina. I soon realized, though, even though our practice was thriving, that I missed our farm and my former agricultural way of life. So in 1976, Mary and I and our 2 small girls moved back home, where I partnered with my brother-in-law to build a grain elevator in our home county, which didn't yet have one. Sadly, my brother-in-law and my partner passed away after only 3 years at the age of 43. So I've been in agribusiness since 1977, the founder and operator of 3 agribusiness and transportation firms serving farmers across the southeastern United States. Farming and farmers have been my life ever since. I've lived and breathed the exhilaration of a great crop and the despair and devastation of a drought. I've learned by experience what my father told me as a child: if you take care of the land, it will take care of you. So let's fast forward to what you're probably more interested in, my years as a public servant. And I want to be clear. Growing up, I was not one of those young men, young boys who shook a president's hand at the age of 16 and aspired to run for office. I was tuned into current events, but I had absolutely no interest in elected politics. I did understand we all have civic rent, so I agreed to chair our local Planning and Zoning Commission. But after 10 years of that service, the state Senate became open, and I was asked to run for that seat. I initially declined, but after a pre-planned family vacation to Williamsburg, Virginia, I changed my mind, having observed the founders' demonstration of citizen engagement. In 1990, the people of District 18 elected me to serve as a member of the Georgia State Senate. I served there for 11 years, and during my tenure was elected by my colleagues, as Congressman Scott said, to be president pro tempore, the pinnacle of leadership in that body from 1996 to 98. You've probably heard, and it's interesting to note, that I served both as a Democrat and a Republican in the Georgia State Senate. In 2002, I was elected the first Republican governor of Georgia in more than 130 years, as Senator Chambliss reminded us, and I assumed that office believing that it was a big job, not just a position. Our team worked diligently for 8 years, striving to make Georgia the best managed state in the nation. As you remember, the period of time for 2002 to 2011 were not the best economic times in our nation, but we learned, with the help of a joyful state workforce, that we could continue to provide value to the citizens of Georgia, even in times of extreme budget pressures. Even though Georgia may not compare to some of your states in some agricultural sectors, I'm proud to say that I come from a state whose #1 economic driver is agriculture. In Georgia, agriculture is one area where Democrats and Republicans consistently reached across the aisle and worked together. I'm pleased to know that reaching across the aisle is common practice within this committee, where partisanship doesn't get in the way of good solutions for America's farmers, ranchers, and consumers. If confirmed as the Secretary of Agriculture, I look forward to working with you, all of you. The makeup of this committee speaks to the size, the reach, and diversity of America's agricultural sector, and it includes at least one guy that I picked watermelons with side by side in my youth. Though I have a lifetime of experience with farming and agribusiness, I appreciate that the Department of Agriculture touches the lives of Americans in many ways that go beyond just farming itself, including in a very small way, improving the lives of the least of these. To continue that role, if I'm honored with Senate confirmation, I will work tirelessly to advance 4 primary goals. And each of these goals is focused on an important constituency, the stakeholders of American agriculture. First, I will maximize the opportunity and ability of the men and women of America's agriculture and agribusiness sector to create jobs, to produce and sell the food and the fiber that feed and clothe the world, and to reap the earned reward of their labor. We want to remove every obstacle and give them every opportunity to prosper. Secondly, for the American taxpayers, our customers, I will prioritize customer service every day. They expect and have every right to demand that we conduct the people's business efficiently, effectively, and with the utmost integrity. Third is our taxpayers are also our consumers. They expect a safe and secure food supply, and USDA will continue to serve in that critical role of ensuring the food that we put on the table to feed our families meets the strict safety standards to which we've established and are accustomed. I will never forget that we're the fortunate beneficiaries of past generations who put a premium on smart stewardship, protecting, preserving, and entrusting us with those valuable resources. That's the basis of our 4th goal. American agricultural bounty comes directly from the land, and today those land resources sustain more than 320 million Americans and countless millions more around the globe. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your time this morning, and rest assured that if confirmed, I look forward to working with the dedicated men and women of the USDA who are committed to serving the People's Department, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you very much.
At this time, before we begin questioning, Senator Chambliss and Congressman Scott, if you would like to excuse yourself, why, please do so.
Thank you very much.
Governor, I'll begin by saying that our farmers and ranchers depend on strong trade relationships around the world. Expanding market access and ensuring that our producers have a level playing field is absolutely critical to our rural economy. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Office of U.S. Trade Representative have a history of working hand in hand to make sure that U.S. agriculture has an influential seat at the trade table. As this administration takes shape, I have been concerned that there may be too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to trade, and we want to make sure that they are familiar with the main ingredients. In addition to the USTR, the President recently established a new National Trade Council at the White House and increased trade responsibilities under the Department of Commerce. The question is, what is the best way that the Department of Agriculture can continue and strengthen its involvement in establishing strong trade policies? How can we best work with the U.S. Trade Representative, the lead trade negotiator, along with other officials throughout the executive, to make sure that agriculture is a top, and I mean top, priority?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're absolutely correct. And I think, as Senator Stabenow mentioned, agriculture needs a strong advocate, a tenacious advocate regarding one of the top issues. We're blessed in this nation to be able to produce more than we can consume. And we're grateful for that, but obviously that implies that we need to sell the bounty all around the world, and you're correct. The relationship between the USDA and its trade representatives, as well as the USTR, as well as Secretary Ross and Commerce, will be vital. Those really begin with relationships, I think, personal relationships. I've had conversations already in this pending time, awaiting confirmation, to discuss with Mr. Lighthouser and a conversation with Secretary Ross over the great opportunity they have to use the bounty of American agriculture to promote agricultural products and to sell those products around the world. I think building goodwill as well as doing the moral aspect of helping to feed that world.
I thank you for your response, Governor, and let me advise all members of the committee we will have a second round. I know members have other things and other responsibilities, and that other committees are meeting, but we will have a second round. In preparation for the 2018 Farm Bill, this year the committee has already started our process of listening to farmers, ranchers, and other stakeholders. Before we write any farm bill, the committee examines the program and asks what is working and what is not working. We will continue the listening and learning process over the weeks and months to come as we craft the next farm bill. I would greatly appreciate your commitment of the department's resources to assist our committee during this entire process. Can we expect support regarding our efforts on behalf of America's farmers and ranchers?
Mr. Chairman, I look forward with great interest to be involved with you all as you look to deliberate and to create the 2018 Farm Bill. I will absolutely commit to you, if confirmed, the resources and the research of the U.S. Department of Agriculture to provide you the information you need to make good decisions. I value my own self as governor in being a facts-based, data-driven decision maker, and I think it's important that we take those facts of things that have worked, learn from the past, those things that have not worked, and create a farm bill for the future in 2018. I know that you and the ranking member are already on the job and doing that in your respective states and listening to our producers across the country as well as our consumers. So I will absolutely commit to you that you will have access to the resources of the Department of Agriculture and anything that you believe you need to the depth that you need, if I'm allowed to be secretary, to utilize those resources. There's great talent over there. We know that the men and women of the USDA have a great wealth of knowledge. The career employees have been doing this for years, and there's a great opportunity to learn from them as well as our producers. And I see the 2018 Farm Bill as an opportunity to meld the wisdom of those career people and with what you all hear in your own districts to make sure that a 2018 Farm Bill meets the needs of our producers, our consumers, and the American taxpayers in 2018.
Thank you, Governor. We have already had the first hearing in Manhattan, Kansas. 600 people in attendance, and that's what the building held. That's what the fire marshal said would stop. And pretty much all of them, as I recall, Senator, stayed. We had 21 good witnesses. And I am going to Michigan State I will probably have to wear green and white,
Definitely.
and may apologize for the 20-point victory that
Okay, you can
Kansas
stop now.
we had.
I wore purple when I went to camp. I just want you to know that. I wore purple for the chairman, and he's, you know, reminding me of something I'd like to forget.
Maybe you could wear black or something. It's okay. Senator Stabenow.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually going to defer to former Chairman Senator Leahy, who has responsibilities in the Judiciary Committee. We know there's a very important Supreme Court nominee being considered, and he does need to leave. So with your agreement, I'm going to defer to Senator Leahy.
The distinguished senator and father of the Northeastern Dairy Compacts, always presented to us at the 11th hour and 59th minute, is recognized.
And don't forget, I wrote the organic farm bill too. But Mr. Chairman, thank you, and Senator Stabenow, thank you for your usual and gracious courtesy. We know how important the Department of Agriculture is in supporting our nation's farmers, our rural communities, our hungry and malnourished families here and abroad, forest lands, consumers. They also advance innovation, research, and energy, the environment, the mounting climate crisis. We have to address what is happening in climate change. Think of the nearly doubling of acres burned in western fires over the last 30 years. And of course, Governor, you know that problem in Georgia. If it's left unchecked in 10 years, 2 out of every $3, just think of this, 2 out of every $3 that we appropriate for the Forest Service will be spent on fire programs. And of course, there's also the loss of life. Last year, we lost a young Vermonter, Justin Beebe, who was killed while battling a fire in Nevada with the Lola Hotshots. So we have to work on this. And I would commend to you, as I did when we had our private meeting, the dedicated, competent, loyal federal employees. Agriculture Department employees, many of them, and they deserve your support. It is a time when they wonder what is happening with hiring freezes or cutbacks. You should spend time with them. Now, I'm going to submit a number of questions for the record, but as I was reminded by the chairman, I never would have thought of this otherwise, I should mention something about our dairy farmers. They're desperate for a new farm bill, but they're asking for your support in developing much-needed risk management options for milk producers. Dairy farmers cannot be left behind. They look at cotton farmers in Georgia and Arkansas who are given generous payments like the $300 million last year in the cotton ginning cost-sharing program. I think we have to have help for our dairy farmers. I would hope that we have, as we've had direct support provided to cotton producers by the USDA outside of the Farm Bill, are recommended by the USDA for inclusion in the next Farm Bill. Will you work on a proportional and immediate support for hard-working dairy farmers?
Senator, I will commit to you as a son of a dairy farmer and having dairied myself, I understand the hard work, 7 days a week, 365 days a year that our farm families, particularly smaller farm families, particularly in your area and others, go through. These are family operations, and they don't take a holiday, they don't take a break. And I understand the pain when the profitability of these farms for the milk prices are just not there, and it puts many farm families under duress to do that.
I appreciate that. One of the problems that they face too, they have a well-documented farm labor shortage. Now, the federal H-2A temporary agriculture visa program, which has helped many, it's worked in your state of Georgia. The Trump winery uses it. but allows only for seasonal farm workers. The Senate had passed comprehensive immigration reform, which the House did not take up. They said that even though it would have passed, it would violate the apparently a sacred rule they have, the Dennis Hastert rule, and so they didn't bring it up. But now we're having, with the operations of ICE and others, I'd ask you to support finding a way to include dairy farms, which require year-round labor. I mean, you can't have somebody come in for 6 months and then say, okay, to the cows, I'll be back in 6 months and to milk you again. Your own experience, you know, that doesn't work very well. So we have sheep and goat herders have that exemption. Will you work with us to find a way to have dairy farm workers in the same program, the same way goat and sheep herders are?
Senator, if I'm honored by your confirmation of the Senate, then I will commit to you to certainly advise and counsel the administration over the need for an agricultural program that for workers that is year-round. As you indicated, cows can't be milked half a day. They're 365 days a year, and I'm very well aware of that. So there's a need. Obviously, many of our dairy workers are immigrant workers, and while there are exemptions in other places, certainly I believe dairy qualifies for that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Stabenow.
The chair recognizes the distinguished senator from Michigan, Senator Stabenow.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome again, Governor Purdue. And we're glad to have this hearing. We need a Secretary of Agriculture, and we need to move forward. I appreciate the fact that you understand the agency and agriculture and grew up in it and support the mission of the agency. So that's very, very important. I want to first start where I think Senator Leahy left off in terms of dairy. You and I have talked about this, and I know growing up on a dairy farm, you understand the challenges. And certainly when we look at the last farm bills, Chairman Roberts and I worked very hard to expand crop insurance. We did expand it to especially crops, which we're already seeing has been very important with the weather challenges in Michigan and other places for our growers, and to expand help for young and beginning farmers. But dairy farmers have not been able to qualify for crop insurance. And so, as you and I talked about yesterday, 3 national groups that speak for dairy farmers, both the American Farm Bureau, National Farmers Union, and the National Milk Producers, have suggested a way that the USDA could provide additional risk management tools for dairy farmers in the short run, because while we're putting together the Farm Bill, we have folks, family farmers in Michigan and across the country that are in very, very difficult situation. And so wonder if you're confirmed, if you'll commit to working with me and working with the industry and all of colleagues who care about this to use administrative authority available to you to provide our nation's dairy farmers with reliable risk management tools, including the crop insurance proposal that was put forward in the letter by the national organizations.
Senator, I welcomed our meeting yesterday, and I was intrigued by your suggestion of that. As I indicated to you, many of your colleagues have regretted the fact that the 14 Farm Bill really didn't meet to your expectations for dairy farmers, or maybe even the cotton program as well, not under Title I. So as I indicated yesterday, I'm absolutely committed to look for a way that can give immediate and temporary relief even prior to the 18 Farm Bill. If it's within the discretion of the Secretary, if I am confirmed, and also we've got to be mindful, obviously, of budget periods as well, so it's got to be within the parameters that meet the budget as well. But I think the ideas that have been proposed are intriguing to me. I have no philosophical difference with those definitions that have been suggested, and I would absolutely look forward to us providing a short and a long-term solution for the dairy and even the cotton program that may help really in the context and the formation of the 2018 Farm Bill. I think it'd be great if we had some ideas that we believe could work even prior to that time.
Thank you very much. I think we do have an opportunity, and I really look forward to working with you to achieve that. You mentioned the budget, and I have to focus on the budget because I'm deeply concerned about the budget put forward by the administration, the signals in terms of lack of understanding of agriculture. I've always said to have an economy and have a middle class, you've got to make things and grow things. It's clear the president has focused on making things, which I appreciate in Michigan, but not growing things, which is equally important. And so when we look at a 21% cut in the budget, it's extremely concerning to me and to so many of us that care about small towns. And in fact, I grew up in one of those small towns in northern Michigan. So I'd like to just go through a series of questions quickly, just in terms of, and get your just yes or no on whether or not you would support those things. Do you think that small communities should have the same access to clean water as large cities?
Of course.
Yeah. Do you think it's important for individuals in small towns who live far away from a health center or a hospital to have access to telemedicine services?
Like you, Senator, as a product of a small community, I absolutely do.
Do you think it's important that farmers have access to the latest research and tools to make their farms more productive?
Certainly.
And do you think rural small businesses should have access to capital to keep them competitive and grow their business?
Certainly.
Do you believe organic farmers have a place in the farm economy?
I think consumers across the country have demonstrated that. I'm sorry, Senator Leahy had to leave.
Yes. And do you think it's important to feed seniors and children in need of assistance?
Yes, ma'am.
I indicate all of this because these are some of the cuts. These are some of the areas that have been zeroed out, like rural water and sewer, or have taken severe cuts in the budget, which are deeply concerning. And so if you just, in the final moment here, if you could tell me first if you had any input in this process of the budget, and secondly, how do you move forward when we are looking at these cuts? How would you, as Secretary of Agriculture, address this to be able to meet the needs of rural America?
Sure. I think you're probably aware, Senator, without confirmation and not being confirmed, I've had no input into the budget. Obviously, I think you probably saw it before I did. Also having some concern. Obviously, as a member of the administration, I view this budget similar to what as governor when I'd get a revenue estimate that I didn't like as well. I didn't like it, but we managed to it. And my goal, I think you indicated the words in your opening statement, that you want a secretary who can be a strong advocate and a tenacious advocate. If I'm confirmed, I want to get under the boards and get some room and work for agricultural producers and consumers to let this administration and any of the people that are making those decisions in that budget area know what's important to America. I think the president understands that many of his votes came from the areas that you're mentioning and referred to, and I hope in the context of a balanced or a budget that meets the objectives that we can get agricultural share there. These are important programs. I recognize that, and I will do everything within my power, within the confines of the administration working there to match what our desires are. I flippantly say sometimes I grew a $20 billion budget in Georgia to $16 billion during that 2003 to 2011 period of time, not necessarily voluntary, but with the dedicated work of the civil workforce in Georgia who really worked hard in those areas. We did do more with less. Some of that has to do with efficiency and effectiveness, which I look forward to engaging this USDA federal workforce in and inspiring them that we can do more. Obviously, it takes some money in many of these areas, and I promise to you I'll be a strong and tenacious advocate for that.
Well, thank you. And let me just stress again, agriculture has been doing more with less. That was our charge, and we met it in the last Farm Bill. But the cuts we're talking about here will be really devastating for farmers in small towns.
Sure.
Thank you.
Speaking of the budget, Senator Bozeman, you'll be recognized next, but first we would like to hear from the chairman of the distinguished Senate Appropriations Committee and the former chairman of this committee, and would remind everyone of that saying that everybody knows that the President proposes and the Congress disposes. Senator Cochran.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for your kind remarks about me and my interest in agriculture and the obligation that we have as government to ensure the fair funding of important government programs that in many cases help farmers when they are in desperate straits with weather disasters and other challenges that come along from time to time that really could put our country in very difficult economic situations. So I know you are familiar with most of the programs that are authorized by our committee and first recommended by our committee and passed and signed and nurtured by both houses of Congress. You've got a lot of people watching you and urging you to do this and that. And I'm confident in your leadership, in your insights, your experiences, all to be brought to the challenge of the Office of Secretary of Agriculture. I'm confident that you're going to do a fine job, and we look forward to working closely with you to identify problems when they arise and can be addressed in a positive way to suit our country's interests, economic interests as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We thank the distinguished chairman, Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Governor Purdue, for your willingness to serve. I enjoyed visiting with you in the office and getting to know you and over lunch and getting to know more about you and your wife. You've got a big job before you, and yet you have a history of doing big jobs, and so we do appreciate your willingness to throw your hat in the ring. Arkansas, you know, is such that agriculture is its #1 industry, around 25%. It's interesting, you know, when you look at the statistics, though, agriculture, farm income is going to be cut from $124 billion to $62 billion. So literally halved, which is a real problem in much of our states, because much of our states are rural in nature. One of the things, though, that we can lessen that pressure is looking for other markets. And in Arkansas, Cuba would be a very important market, you know, with rice production and various other things, poultry. Can you talk a little bit about efforts that you would take in the sense, not only Cuba, but other markets throughout the world, so that we could have the attitude that we've got customers here, but very importantly, customers spread out all over the world?
Certainly, Senator. I think in respect specifically to Cuba, for those of you on the Gulf Coast and those on the East Coast, as well as even though that have been mentioned by your colleagues in the upper Midwest, I think we would love to have Cuba as a customer in many things. I led a ag delegation from Georgia to Cuba as governor in 2010, and I found then as much of the problem there regarding demand was the ability to pay and the ability to finance there as much as anything. I think they would love to have our products, and they are certainly appropriate customers for the rice that Louisiana grows and for Arkansas grows, and other beans that are edible beans up in the upper Midwest that they grow. And for that reason, I think if you all could see fit to look into the private financing operation, one of the things they mentioned to us is that they had to, by the restraints, they had to go through Europe and have a haircut, financial haircut in that regard of being able to purchase the product. So I think we have the product they need, and they would like the product. I think the real issue that I heard regarding Cuba was the financing part, and certainly that would come probably under other areas, not the USDA, but I would support their efforts if we could get private financing. Regarding other areas, certainly in Central, South America, Europe, and Southeast Asia as well, there are new and developing markets there, and I hope that we can work very closely with Trade Representative Lighthouser as well as Secretary of Commerce Ross in order to put agriculture first in their repertoire of things to trade. And I believe that we have the ability to produce a very efficient crop and products, food products, as well as other products, the clothes and other things around the world they need. And I look forward. That's certainly from visiting with most all of your colleagues. Trade was right at the top of the list. I think when you talk to farmers around the globe, that's what they're most concerned about. We have a worldwide supply and demand issue that's weighing heavily on prices currently, and we're seeing some of the lowest prices in many years. It's putting a lot of pain out there, which is a direct result of the financial situation that you mentioned in your comments. That farmers are really struggling to be profitable, hold on, and many times even the best farmers are not able to produce a product even with the best production capabilities they may have. So I think trade is really the answer. I look forward to being an advisor and a counselor of this administration, U.S. Trade Representative, specifically about the benefit that we have of farm products to sell around the world.
No, that's excellent. And as you said, in regard to Cuba, the financing really is key. So we actually have a bill that says that not government backed, but if if an individual or a private bank or whatever wants to do the financing, that they'll have the ability to do that. I'm running out of time, but I do want to comment. One of the things that I have real concern about, and I think the committee does, is you have the feeding programs in the schools. Summer comes, and then you have a bunch of kids, that don't benefit from that. What we're trying to do is get a smooth transition, and if you would just, affirm your recognition of the importance of that. Those rules that govern, that transition and stuff haven't been changed since the 60s. So if you could just, in 5 seconds, talk.
Certainly, I was able to share with several of your colleagues who mentioned that privately in their offices that I would love to facilitate that kind of transition to make sure that those kids who are able to get meals while they're at school are able to continue that through the summertime, and that they don't fall into a problem during that period of time to keep kids healthy.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Governor.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for holding the hearing. And Governor Purdue, congratulations to you and your family on your nomination. I wasn't going to raise it, but Senator Bozeman did. That's a bill he and I have together on school lunches, so I'm glad in the summer, glad to hear him raise it in your comment. I was going to raise trade, and I'm so pleased with your answer because, as you know, commodity prices are just terrible right now for all of our farmers and ranchers, and throughout Colorado, our rural communities, which really led the recovery for us coming out of this terrible recession, now face commodity prices that really challenge them as as their inputs are higher and higher and higher. And there was so much negative talk about trade during this presidential campaign that I think we're looking to you to help resurrect that with respect to agriculture in the United States. 80% of the wheat that we produce in Colorado is exported. All of the growth for our dairy farmers is going to come from trade with countries, many of which were countries that were involved with the TPP. Our potato growers in Colorado need to have access to these markets. So knowing that you will be a zealous advocate for trade on behalf of our agricultural sector is enormously important to my state, and if there's anything I can do to help you, help translate that to this administration, I will commit to do that to you. I also wanted to raise with you the issue of our national forests. A lot of people don't know that comes within the Department of Agriculture, and you mentioned in your statement the importance of smart stewardship. And one place where we have not had smart stewardship is with the maintenance of our national forests, as you and I discussed when when you were in my office. Last year we spent over 50%, I think it was 60% of the budget, the Forest Service budget, fighting fires. We've had, in 2015, the Colorado State Forest Service estimated around 834 million dead standing trees in Colorado. That's up 30% from 2008 estimates. And I've said to my colleagues on this committee and other places in the Senate, if you are downstream from Colorado, which almost everybody is, you need to care about what's happening in the headwaters of these rivers, and that's forests that are managed by your folks if you are confirmed. So let me first say this. Will you please come to Colorado and look at these forests firsthand?
I would look forward to that, Senator. I think I mentioned to you I saw the ravages of that terrible fire over north of Glenwood that occurred many years ago with loss of life, and I still see on those beautiful mountains there that what the effects of forest fire from years ago. So absolutely, I will come and look forward to visiting with you, as well as many of your Western colleagues mentioned this as one of their primary areas, so well, it's a concern.
And I hope, and maybe you could say a word about this too, I know Senator Thune and others have been concerned about this. You know, every year Secretary Vilsack has tried to put something in the budget to end this fire borrowing process that we have, to make sure that either we treat these fires like every other disaster that we have, or that somehow we budget correctly so that we can do the mitigation on the front end, because what we're doing is we're spending the money in the most expensive, least logical way possible. I wonder if you've got a comment on that.
I certainly do, and I've heard you all and your colleagues loud and clear over that. I also had an extensive conversation with Secretary Vilsack about the upside-down portion of the budget there, and his continual having to borrow to manage those forest fires or to help put out those forest fires. That's a bad way to do, as we talked about. On the front end, as you know, the healthy forests are helpful in preventing forest fires, and whether it's the underbrush, the deadfall that we haven't been able to get to, using 2/3 of the budget to fight, we're upside down on that. We need to be doing at least 2/3 there of the budget in managing healthy forests in order to prevent forest fires. So my goal would be to reverse that, and I would love for you and your colleagues to consider looking at forest fires like we do many other natural disasters as well, to put a funding mechanism in there where, just like hurricanes or tornadoes or other things that are floods that we use there, would qualify for those types of funds, because Secretary Vilsack was very disheartened by the fact of having to come up with millions of dollars many times from other parts of the budget and borrowing there, and it just didn't, it was not very effective.
Well, if you can break this Gordian knot, you will be a hero in my state, and probably some others as well. So I look forward to having you in Colorado. Thanks.
I look forward, Senator, for us to break that Gordian knot.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Purdue, thank you so much for being here today, and I want to thank your lovely family for joining you as well. It's good to see everybody here. As some of my colleagues have already stated, the ag economy has really been in a downturn the last number of years, and a lot of our producers are hurting, especially those young and beginning farmers that have just gotten their start really in the last 10 years. The renewable fuels revolution bolstered demand for our commodities, driven by the Renewable Fuel Standard and energy programs that were included in the Farm Bill. Trade deals like NAFTA help to fuel both grain and meat exports, which are very vital to our producers' profitability. As we have seen so many times before, our farmers continue to innovate and find new ways to grow more food with fewer inputs, and have not only met this new demand, but they've exceeded it and done quite well, leading to the slump in commodity prices we have been feeling so acutely. When I travel around the state, I engage in a 99-county tour, and I consistently hear how challenging it is to be a farmer or a rancher right now, due not only to the low prices, but also because of the onerous government regulations. I hope you're prepared to work with all of those who are engaged in our ag economy to ensure it remains one of the strongest in feeding and fueling our growing world. Whenever I do visit those farmers and ranchers and others within the ag community, One of the common refrains that I hear is about federal regulations, especially from the EPA, how they're harming their operations and making their lives pretty difficult, whether it's their misguided WOTUS rule or the delays in approving ag biotech products. The EPA almost seems to have an agenda against those that are in the agricultural community. How will you collaborate with the EPA to ensure that their work is helping rather than hindering our farmers and ranchers?
Thank you very much, Senator. I think like many solutions, begins with personal relationships. I've taken the opportunity to visit with Administrator Pruitt already regarding some of these issues, and I think not only in the EPA, but in all agencies, we develop silos that are unfortunate because, as you well know, many of our producers, when a regulation is made in other places, whether it be labor or EPA or others, are the guys are the ones that get pushed off the boat. And my goal is to have an ongoing communications team identified with each of these agencies. It may be, whether it's FDA, EPA, labor, OSHA, others, to identify the things that would be maybe the unintended consequences of regulations, and to work together ahead of time before those regulations are promulgated to give us an opportunity in representing USDA, both agricultural producers and consumers, to let these other agencies know what the impact would be and what the cost-benefit reward would be to agricultural producers. So I think it becomes, I'm a kind of a face-to-face sort of person. I believe in going directly and communicating transparently about the needs and about the desires there. I come from the part of the world that have seen our farmers as good stewards. I think they want to be. If they have the right tools from a conservation perspective, they want to care for the land. They're the ones that are making their living out there, and I believe they want to do that. Rather than prescriptive, onerous type regulations, let's give them the ability to do that and incentivize them in a way where they can be even better than they've been in the past. But the progress that you indicated that we've made over the last several years with doing more production with less inputs, precision agriculture, better use of water, and those kind of things, and no-till, all those sorts of things, preserving our soil. Our producers have done a good job at that. They want just a kind of a fair shake in being able to produce without the onerous prescriptive type of regulations that harm their ability to continue to perform.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I certainly support your willingness to work with the other departments and the heads of those agencies. We simply can't operate in a vacuum, and developing those relationships and keeping those relationships is very important, and I think you're absolutely the right person to do that. So I appreciate that very much. I also just want to make a comment, too. I know that in the 2014 Farm Bill, Congress really recognized the importance of trade, and Congress directed the USDA to establish an Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs, and I hope that you will take a look at that and make sure that we have the right person for that job established as well. So thank you very much, Governor. It's good to see you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Governor, for being here. Thank you for our meeting that we had previously. I want to talk a little bit about immigration. It's been an issue, unfortunately, that's had a very toxic debate that has been harmful in our state. One area where it's particularly harmful is in agriculture, because we rely on immigrant labor for a lot of our fruits, vegetables, and dairy. And so I hope that you can speak to President Trump and Secretary Kelly about the effects of immigration enforcement policies and priorities that the President has announced and how it impacts our agriculture sector. It's estimated that about 50% of agriculture workers are immigrants. And so if we don't have proper immigration reform and a debate about a holistic policy, it is going to harm families in New York, and it's going to harm agricultural workers on our farms throughout upstate New York and Long Island. So I ask, will you make a commitment that you will work towards making sure our farms have the workers they need?
I will certainly commit to you that, Senator, particularly in your dairy industry in upstate New York and others, just as Senator Leahy has mentioned. That's not a seasonal job, and I think if you go into dairy barns around the country, you're going to find most of the time those cows are being milked by immigrant labor, and I do plan to be a voice in administration to persuade policymakers there over this issue. I recognize that many of our producers, both seasonal types of crops that you mentioned as well as dairy farms, have a good bit of anxiety about that, considering that, and I will absolutely commit to you.
Anxiety. The other area, as you mentioned, our H-2A program is a visa program to recruit temporary workers on a seasonal basis. Cows need to be milked every day. So it doesn't work for us. It's very cumbersome, it's difficult, and so I would also ask your commitment that you will work on that program specifically to streamline it and make it available for all agricultural workers.
Senator, I've heard that loud and clear from people close to me at home and our customers there in Georgia as well. You mentioned obviously your state, but I think virtually every state in the nation is affected by that to some degree. I think there are some things that we can do with H-2A, and if I'm confirmed, I will commit to you that that and trade are two issues that we will begin post-haste to work on.
So as you know, we are a significant dairy state. We're the third producer, fourth, I think, most recently in the country. And I would love it if you would come to upstate New York and do a field hearing. I know you have to go to Colorado now, but could you please also come to upstate New York? We'd love to have a field hearing to talk about dairy pricing because the dairy pricing system, as you know, has been so destabilizing and is not something that farmers can rely on. The insurance programs we have written are not working. So we really need to do a top-to-bottom reform of how we do dairy pricing in this country and create insurance programs and products that could actually work for small dairies, particularly in places like upstate New York.
Senator, I'll come if you promise not to make me milk any more cows.
No, you don't have to. I promise.
But you're right, though. The volatility of prices, and there's no business, not just agriculture, but there's no business that can survive with the volatility of range of prices that dairy farmers have had to undergo the last few years. They had some high prices, but the prices they're currently experiencing are just unprofitable, and even the best family farms cannot survive under those.
I agree. Another issue very important to New York State is the SNAP program. It is so important that we have food for our families. Some of the work that this committee's done for making sure SNAP gets to rural families, using farmers markets, making sure that we can do summer meals, that kind of work. I would ask your commitment to focusing on how we can deliver more food to more families throughout this country as our Ag Secretary.
We hope that we can do that even more efficiently and effectively than we have. It's certainly important to the children and the families of America to do that, Senator, and I hope that we can work together to accomplish that.
Thank you. My last issue is funding and budgets. I was very concerned about the President's budget and how it would take away access to water systems. We have so many unmet sewer needs in New York State. Our rural water systems are in desperate need of investment. Similarly, we have desperate need of investment for rural broadband. It's really important that we can get high-speed internet to all our rural areas. Our farmers depend upon it. Our small businesses depend upon it. And the USDA Rural Utility Service Program is really important. So I'd like your commitment that you will continue to work with this committee, which has bipartisan support for those investments.
Certainly. I'm hopeful, obviously, that the President's proposal over infrastructure will be recognized, that the agricultural broadband issue, if we're going to keep kids on the farm in rural areas, if our rural areas are going to be able to thrive and survive like cities do with the density, we've got to have the connectivity. It's just as important really now as sewer or water, clean water or other things, is the connectivity to the world. Yep. And that's what we're advocating, will advocate, continue to advocate. I know members of the USDA have already been meeting with the White House infrastructure team over that, and we will certainly promote that to the best of our ability.
Thank you.
Well, Coop, it's time for you, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's almost high noon, so it's time for me to ask questions. But thank you, Governor Purdue, for taking this on. You're the right guy for the job. These are tough times in agriculture. We've got commodity prices and livestock prices below the cost of production, uncertainty about trade, concerns about disease, and 2 crop years left in terms of implementation of this farm bill before we start writing a new one. And I look forward to working with you on the next farm bill, as well as continuing to implement this one. I know we don't have any problem getting you to come to South Dakota as long as we still have pheasants in South Dakota, so I expect you to be there. I've got a number of questions I need to cover quickly, so if you could just answer yes to all of them, that would be fine. In terms of the current farm bill, the past administration showed a lot of inflexibility with regard to administration. In a number of areas. The commodity title, Title I, the ARC payments, and the data that was used to calculate those payments, CRP vegetative cover management practices, and equitable CRP acreage distribution were all things where we don't think the past administration was following the intent of Congress. So with 2 years left on that farm bill, will you be willing to work with me and my staff on these issues to make improvements in program administration, make sure those programs are operating in the way in which Congress intended?
Yes.
Thank you. Governor Purdue, I know you're aware of the recent tainted Brazilian meat scandal, which has resulted now in USDA issuing a press release announcing additional steps that they're taking to ensure that our food supply is kept safe. None of the facilities implicated in that scandal, the Brazilian meat scandal, have shipped meat to the United States, according to USA. But the question is, do you believe that accelerated testing of all the incoming shipments of raw meat from Brazil will provide adequate protection, or should we begin to think about triggering USDA to impose an outright shutdown if there's unsafe meat?
Senator, I believe that the men and women of the FSIS are doing a wonderful job going to the 100% inspection there coming in. I'm concerned, obviously, if we go to embargoing at this, where these plants were not shipping in the U.S., if we go to embargoing or putting a shutdown on there will be retaliation there for our products, maybe around the world as well. We already know that we've had some high-path avian influenza, and some countries have responded in that way. So while that's very, very localized, I don't want to punish another country, but I do want USDA inspectors to be on the job with a 100% type of inspection of any products coming in into the United States.
Okay. We both come from states where we grow trees. The trees in South Dakota grow a little slower than the pine trees do in your home state. But in the last half decade, we've seen a rapid increase in mortality. It's up 53%, and a decrease in growth, down 69% in our state. Unfortunately, our situation isn't unique with over 82 million acres of national forest under stress from fires, insects, or both. And I know that Senator Bennett touched on this, but can I get your commitment to focus on turning around the national forest and expanding the management that we need to create jobs and healthy stands of timber?
Senator, absolutely, you can have my commitment. I think that I view the United States Forest Service and our United States forest as challenges, opportunities clothed in challenges right now, and I think there's a real opportunity to make these forests healthy. I do come from a state where it's mostly private ownership. My sense from visiting with many of you is that we have just not really been good neighbors in a lot of places and taking care of the public stewardship portion where many private landowners would. So I look forward to giving those best management practices, leading and inspiring the United States Forest Service to take pride in the way they would care for it just as it was their own.
Okay, thank you. And I know this got touched on once already as well, but agriculture, of course, helps build a strong U.S. economy. It's a #1 industry in my state, but I think it's critical to our national economy, and especially in our rural communities. And the RFS has been an essential driver of growth in rural areas of our country, and the certainty of the policy has created jobs and spurred added research and investment. Can you commit to ensuring that we'll have a strong RFS to provide economic security for these rural communities?
I can do that, and I'm happy to have also the President's commitment of his concern and interest in that area as well. So you absolutely can have that commitment.
Appreciate that. My time's expired. I thank you again for taking this on. We look forward to working with you and not only on, as I said, this farm bill, but the one to come, which we'll be getting started on very soon. Thank you.
Senator.
I thank the senator. I know he has a date at high noon, so you can excuse yourself at any time. Senator Highcamp.
terrific. Thank you. And I thank my colleagues who probably went out for a cup of coffee or something else, so it boosted me in line. Governor Purdue, welcome, and welcome to your beautiful family. What legacy you leave. I think there's someone who looks a whole lot like you back there. I kind of look. You used to be a lot more handsome when you were younger, I think.
It was the first human cloning, I think. There.
It's pretty remarkable. I was checking it out, and I'm thinking, wow, that's, well, you used to be very handsome, I might add. I want to associate myself with the remarks of Senator Thune, who talked about the importance to really have flexibility as we implement the next Farm Bill. We saw some great flexibility, but then we ran into some roadblocks, and so I appreciate your commitment. I also know that you kind of had me in when we were visiting, when you entered my office and you said 3 words, trade, trade, trade. And I knew that you and I were on the same wavelength, that is a critical component. But my concern is what we're seeing really out of the White House and out of the budget doesn't seem to be pro-rural or pro-agriculture. And so we need you to be an absolute voracious and active fighter on behalf of rural America in that White House and with other agencies such as EPA and OMB and the USTR. Can you commit to doing that?
Agriculture is in my heart, and I look forward to fighting for the producers of America just because, as I said that, we know how vital it is. And I will absolutely be a tenacious advocate and fighter where necessary to do that.
And I hope that you will engage us. We're a very bipartisan, collaborative committee, and we all represent agricultural states, but we also know how vital, as Senator Thune said, how vital agriculture is to our national economy. A couple unique North Dakota issues. We have a lot of prairie potholes. It's part of what we do in terms of the resource, and it provides for some great duck hunting and geese hunting. But we have a lot of farmers who would like an opportunity to farm their land and not just raise ducks. And I think one of the problems that we have is not only running into maybe an attitude sometimes that the wetland is more important than the farmer, but also not having enough staff to do the work that needs to be done in order to make the determination within USDA. Can you commit that you will staff up so we won't have farmers waiting to find out if they can tile their land?
Not only staffing up, but I also think the relationship, as we talked about earlier, with the administrator of EPA to make sure that our producers and farmers don't get caught in some of these unintended consequences of rules that have gone awry in a confiscatory type of way, because that's very important. As they try to be compliant, sometimes it's they get caught into a web of rules that are very onerous, and I will not only try to provide the staff that they could do good conservation or good soil preservation, but to work with our administrator at EPA to do that as well.
We love our neighbors to the north, but sometimes we'd like maybe a little tougher enforcement on some of the grain standards. We've been working on a project out of my office as it relates to the treatment of our grain, which becomes feed category as opposed to what it really is, which is good quality wheat. Of course, we offer a different opportunity for Canadian grain that comes south. Can you commit to working with the USTR to change their policies and continue to prevent discrimination against grain going to the north?
Certainly. I think this is one of those areas where many people have talked about the benefits of NAFTA. I think as we look at that, I think there's some inequities and some unilateral issues during that, cattle, and some milk products that we can look certainly to our neighbors to the north, of which we have a great relationship, but we just want to make sure that it is a fair proposition for all.
Great. The sugar program is critical, and I'm not sure, I haven't been here for the whole hearing. I don't know if anyone's raised this with you, but it's been a program that has guaranteed a steady supply of sugar to this country. I think it's done equitably, doesn't cost the United States taxpayer really anything, but yet it provides that value-added opportunity in my community and my state and the state of many states across the country. Will you continue to commit to supporting the sugar program as it's been outlined in the farm program in the past?
Senator, if confirmed, I commit to you that I will look at that in the farm program going on, and will commit to support the the best benefit of that. I think also that's another issue where maybe trade to the south. We need to look at some of the issues over sugar inequities that may be coming into the country that have been harmful to your growers.
I was kind of hoping for a yes, but I guess I got a maybe. Thanks so much, Governor, and congratulations on your nomination.
Senator Purdue.
Mr. Chairman, for the sake of the Republic, I'm going to withhold questions today. Thank you.
It would appear that would be Senator Strange. Welcome to committee, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to be the first Alabamian in over 20 years to serve on the Agriculture Committee, and I look forward to serving with you and my colleagues on the committee. I'm especially pleased to welcome you, Governor Purdue, this morning. It's nice to have a potential secretary, I'm sure future secretary, who speaks the same language that I do as your neighbor to the west. I've enjoyed watching you in your career, and I look forward to working with you. I'm going to also spare the committee lengthy questions today. I have a number that we talked about privately. I do want to just build on something that Senator Ernst mentioned. For the last 6 years, I was honored to be the Attorney General of our state, and I got to work very closely with our now EPA Administrator, Scott Pruitt. We spent a lot of time litigating against the federal government and its overreaching federal agenda. As we saw it, we were successful in a lot of cases. And one of the things that I took away from that experience, and I've discussed this with Administrator Pruitt, is the lack of cooperation, if you will, between the federal agencies that affect the agriculture world and our constituents. Agriculture is the biggest part of our economy in the state of Alabama, as you all know, because we share many of the same industries: forestry, catfish farming, and all types of other farming activities. And the lack of cooperation between those agencies was very frustrating to our farmers. And what I'm hoping that you will do is follow through with your commitment to Senator Ernst to make sure that you, as Secretary of Agriculture, are communicating with Administrator Pruitt and others so that we're eliminating unnecessary, inefficient, and really inconsequential barriers to our farmers so that they can produce the products that we need in this country and internationally. So I appreciate your comments to her. I don't have another question for you right now. I can submit some others later, but that's of particular concern to me because it's a real-world concern to the people who have to live under the regulations that we pass here in Washington.
Thank you, Senator. Just like I mentioned to Senator Ernst, if I'm honored with confirmation, that's really one of the things I look most forward to because we've seen that, the harm that it causes when one agency looks like they're working at cross purposes with another. And I think we're all Americans and we're all beneficiaries of all these agencies. And I really look forward to developing the relationships, mutual respectful relationships with other department heads that and other agencies that can communicate possible unintended consequences. So thank you for mentioning that.
I look forward to continuing to work with you as you assume your responsibilities. I also wanted to welcome your family, your beautiful family, and thank you for your public sacrifice. The family is a partner in this venture, as I will know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Donnelly, you were AWOL last night at the Marine Mess Night. So I want a written response back to me as an excuse, but I'm going to recognize you anyway, Senator Donnelly.
Well, I was afraid you were going to send me to Iwo Jima, sir, so, which would have been a great honor. Governor Purdue, one thing I want to ask you, I noted that you played football for the University of Georgia. And on September 9th, in the state of Indiana, in Notre Dame, Indiana, Georgia is playing Notre Dame, my alma mater. And I want to invite you to the game. We would like to have you there. We'll have a big pork barbecue in your honor. We'll have all the Indiana farmers there. And you can see the Irish beat the Bulldogs. Would you like to come?
I'll accept that invitation except for the last clause there.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about crop insurance.
Sure.
It's critically important to my state. It's something that we're going to be working on in the Farm Bill. And to my farmers in Indiana, that is something that they want to make sure stays strong and stays protected. And I wanted to get your views on that.
Thank you, Senator. I thought you all in the 14 Farm Bill made a lot of progress in the crop insurance area. Obviously, it can always be refined and made better, but it's vital to farmers, good producers there that need that safety net of both the risk of production and pricing that you all did so well in that area. And I hope we can even continue that and enhance that. And as some of your colleagues have mentioned, look at risk management proposals and other commodities that make sense. To me, I think the American taxpayer gets a good value for that, and hopefully we can work together. I look forward to working with you all as we continue, if I'm confirmed, to make sure that the crop insurance program is sound, solid, and a good economic value for both not only the producers but the taxpayers as well.
One of the things that we're all shooting for, I know in Kansas and Michigan and Indiana and Mississippi, is for growth of our rural areas and maximizing economic opportunities there. That is a passion of mine, to make sure we have 92 counties, that every county has a chance, every community has a chance, the chance to buy a home, raise a family, take a vacation, retire with dignity. And the Secretary of Agriculture plays a huge role in rural communities especially. We need to make sure our rural communities have broadband, so companies located there can compete with those across the world, and that they have the same access to educational opportunities our children do, as in the cities, to expand market opportunities. And so I want to make sure that as Secretary of Agriculture, you look at this in a way that you'll be looking at things like broadband and others to maximize economic opportunities for our rural communities.
Certainly, not only broadband, Senator, but the opportunity the USDA has in rural development in so many other areas. I mean, the vitality of our small communities around your state and all of these states really depends on a strong agricultural economy. But the USDA has, in the past, through its rural development program, has been able to help communities maybe just get them over the line, to do some things they wanted to do, whether it's health care or other types of things to do that. And that's one of the great benefits that I look forward to being able to do, if confirmed, to make the lives of people across America, particularly in rural areas, better because of the presence of the USDA.
One other thing that we work on a lot of conservation programs. We're very, very proud of our cover crop programs. I think we're first in the nation with that. And as our chairman and ranking member always talk about, nobody cares about the environment more than the farmers and the families that live there. And so we want to make sure that as you look at your job going forward, you're going to commit to work to support and improve the conservation programs as well.
Certainly, the NRCS is a big part of American agriculture, and as more farmers learn how to preserve and care and create clean water, reduce runoff, use more efficient use of water in irrigation and precision agriculture, those are the research arm of USDA, and the extension arm pushing that education information out is critical to continue to improve. The good thing, what I like about farmers is they're all about continuing improvement. Right. And they're competitive, and they want to do better each and every year.
I apologize. I'm running out of time, so I want to ask one last thing. The USDA has worked to increase access to treatment for opioid and heroin abuse in rural communities. It is breathtaking. They've assisted in creating transitional housing, funded initiatives to improve education and raise awareness to the dangers of this. Purdue's been an amazing partner in all of this, and I want to make sure that the USDA is our partner in this critical battle against opioid and heroin abuse.
Secretary Vilsack and I had an extended conversation about the ability just to do that. That was one of the things that I was mentioning, in the ability of the USDA in its rural development program to add value in rural communities, even in the areas of health care. So certainly.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Marines are my heroes, and I'd be honored to go to the mess with you. Anytime you want to bring me, I'll be your wingman, sir.
Senator Pye. Senator Daines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Stabenow. Governor Purdue, thank you so much for your willingness to step up and to serve as our next Secretary of Agriculture. This is a big deal for my home state of Montana, because agriculture is our state's #1 industry. It's $6 billion a year back home. Without agriculture, Montana does not have a strong economy. Our farmers, our ranchers, they produce wheat, barley, cattle, sugar beets, pulse crops. In fact, we're the nation's leading producer of pulse crops now, which has been an exciting development to see in our state as we diversify our ag portfolio. Our products play a critical role in not only feeding our country, but certainly feeding the entire world. Ag production across our nation is diverse. Montana ag presents some unique and especially specific challenges, but great opportunities. With that in mind, I want to make sure I extend an invitation to you, Governor Purdue, to come out to Montana. We're going to have an Ag Summit May 31st and June 1st in Great Falls, which is kind of ground zero of our ag economy in Montana. I would love to have you consider coming out. If nothing else, we do some preseason elk scouting there too for the fall, but we'd love to have you come out. Regarding trade, 95% of the world's consumers are outside the United States. Certainly we have more spending power today on a per capita basis. But as we think about the longer term, as Wayne Gretzky famously said, skate to where the puck is headed, not where it's at. Trade becomes very important, I think, not only for today's generation, but future generations of farmers and ranchers. We're seeing low commodity prices, declining farm incomes. Boys, I have my barley and wheat producers in my office the last couple of weeks, our cattle producers. It's a pretty tough climate right now because of low prices. And the access to foreign markets for long-term growth in ag, I don't think can be overstated. Vast amounts of our wheat, our beef, our barley, pulse crops are exported every year, and that helps us in this price arena, helps create jobs, helps grow our economy. Governor, as Secretary, how will you ensure that ag's voice is heard loud and clear within this administration to fight for our farmers and ranchers, to ensure we have access to new markets abroad and not face retaliation?
Thank you, Senator. I think the good news is we've got a growing middle class around the world that's hungry for those products. And food is a noble thing to trade. And as I've indicated several times before, we've got a great story to tell. We've got producers here that can produce more than we need to consume. That's not the case in many parts of the world. So why don't we use that bounty to supply one of the fundamental needs of mankind around the world? And I will continue tirelessly to advocate that within our administration and in conjunction with you all in development. I plan to be on site as USDA's chief salesman around the world to sell these products, to negotiate these deals side by side with USTR, side by side with Secretary Ross and our whole team there. I believe that USDA will be intimately involved in the personal, on the ground, boots on the ground negotiations at tables around this world with ag ministers and foreign dignitaries there selling our product.
I know that will be music to the ears of Montana farmers and ranchers to have an advocate like yourself. And I think as a governor, you bring that unique experience of having to be the chief salesperson, certainly, on behalf of your farmers and ranchers across the world. I want to shift gears and talk for a moment about forest management reform. Of course, we always refer to this committee as the Ag Committee, and that's always going to be one of our highest priorities. But it's the Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee. And back home in my state, one of my highest priorities is restoring active management to Montana's national forests. Unfortunately, excessive federal regulations, laws, we have chronic litigation from extremist groups have limited our management of our national forests. And a healthy forest is a forest that is actively managed. Even projects that we move forward through collaboration, bringing sportsmen groups, conservation groups, folks from the logging industry, we move forward and we're litigated at the end and oftentimes lose our cases before the Ninth Circuit, as they unfortunately have continuous litigation. Unfortunately, we have a recent Ninth Circuit decision called the Cottonwood Environmental Law Center versus the Forest Service. It's added another layer of unnecessary red tape and is threatening dozens of forest management projects. The Supreme Court won't hear this case, unfortunately, but we think we can change the outcome here statutorily, and I have a bipartisan support for this legislation, and I would ask, would you work with me to reverse this disastrous decision that we've seen from the Ninth Circuit?
Senator, confirmed, I would welcome the opportunity to to work with you. I've seen your legislation, proposed legislation. I agree with it wholeheartedly. I think at some point you've got to say the end is the end, and rather than stopping things that have been agreed to with continuing legislation or litigation rather is just unproductive and creates the what you talked about by unproductive and unmanaged forests there. At some point we've got to say that's it, we've done that, we've made a decision, and we're moving forward. Many of your colleagues already have NEPA approved projects that we haven't gotten to yet. That's a top priority, but then to continue to move forward. I am hopeful, Senator, that as we demonstrate good stewardship and good management of the U.S. forest, the litigators on the other side will see this is good, this is productive. Forests are renewable, they're healthy, they're better. They're better for everyone when they're managed well rather than just to lie out there and die upon themselves. So hopefully we can do that.
Well said, Governor. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Governor. I enjoyed our meeting in our office, and as you know, Minnesota is 5th in the country for agriculture. We discussed the differences, which you're well aware of the southern and midwestern agriculture. Some things in common. One of them may be birds. As you know, we were hit by the avian flu hard in the Midwest and around the country. As a result, almost 9 million birds died, causing economic losses of $650 million. Given the recent detections in Tennessee, Alabama, and Wisconsin, are you prepared to respond immediately to prevent the possible spread of the disease if and when you're confirmed as Secretary?
Certainly, Senator. As you know, the poultry production of this country is amazing. The whole ecosystem that's been developed around that protein, being able to export worldwide, whether it's eggs or poultry protein, is critical. I'm very proud of the work that I've seen that the USDA has done in Tennessee, and their very quick confinement and working cooperation with both states of Alabama and Tennessee. And I think the hardworking people in that animal health area have done a wonderful job. I think they learned a lot from the 2015 outbreak where we might have been a little slow there. They got on this very quickly, and we are praying that that's confined. So certainly we cannot afford an industry such as our poultry industry in any sector to be affected by the damages of a very severe high pathogen avian influenza.
But what if the proposed 21% cut to USDA went through? Do you think this could still be the priority that it is?
Well,
how would you manage it if it
I'm hoping that we can work with you and the appropriators. We understand what the President's proposal is, but I hope that you all will help in looking at the keepers of the purse.
Different amount of money. Thank you. That's a good answer. I'm the lead sponsor of the Senate bill to end the embargo with Cuba, and how would you respond to farmers who are concerned about the administration cutting off opportunities for American business in Cuba or somehow changing President Obama's executive order? I mean, we'd like to go further, of course, and pass legislation, but we are where we are right now.
Again, I've answered earlier that I think if we can get the private financing done there, and there's some proposals already to do that, I think American agriculture, both in the Upper Plains and the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, have a wonderful opportunity. That's a country that's hungry. I led a delegation there in 2010 in Georgia, and they wanted our product. They just could not afford it and pay for it there based on the financial crisis that they were in. So hopefully we can mitigate that.
Well, I know Senator Thune asked you about the RFS, and will you work to advocate for a strong renewable fuel standard during interagency review with some of your other secretaries?
I will.
Okay, that's a great answer, too. The dairy program, what would you do as secretary to ensure the resources needed are available for the margin protection program to be a meaningful safety net for dairy farmers?
Thank you, Senator. I think I've heard some recent ideas recently that I hopefully will even enhance that margin protection program with a risk management program for immediate relief as well as possible solutions for the 2018 Farm Bill. The volatility of the prices that we've seen in dairy are just unsustainable, and you've got not only family dairy farms but large dairy farms that are just unprofitable, and many of them don't have the equity to continue in that area, and it'll change their whole lives.
Thank you very much. Senator Daines, you were just discussing forestry with you. In the 2014 Farm Bill, I worked on expanding the Good Neighbor Authority that gives the Forest Service additional flexibility to work with willing state and private landowners to implement forest management practices. Will you commit to ensuring that Good Neighbor Authority and other tools to improve forest health from the 2014 Farm Bill are fully implemented and emphasized as we continue to work on the next Farm Bill?
I love that name, Good Neighbor, and that's what I hope that we can become. I think, again, where the U.S. Forest Service becomes a welcome part of the community, indwelling there and working with the private citizens there, not only for jobs, but for good forest management and just literally being good neighbors. There's not a better way to say that.
Thank you. And last, I'm the co-chair of the Senate Broadband Caucus, and I also am on the Commerce Committee. You and I talked briefly in my office about the importance of broadband in rural areas. Do you want to just end with that and what you'd like to see there coming out of USDA?
I'd love to see it get it done all across this country with the infrastructure proposal. We are going to have a seat at the table there. The White House has already asked USDA for their ideas about that. That's number one.
Thank you.
As well as water resources as well.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much, Governor.
Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Purdue, it's great to see you. I want to welcome you and Mary and your beautiful family.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here and for your willingness to serve. I chair the Ag Appropriations Committee, and so I want to express my appreciation for Senator Klobuchar's question, and even more, I want to express my appreciation for your answer, and I look forward to working with you on that very important issue. Also, one of our former colleagues, Senator Mike Johans, as you know, was an outstanding Secretary of Agriculture, and he visited North Dakota on several occasions. And so I want to ask if, in fact, you would be good enough to show up and visit our farmers and ranchers in North Dakota who do a fantastic job and would love to see you.
What's the record, Senator?
You know, I don't know, but I know Johans was there multiple occasions, and you can't let him show you up. So I need a commitment that you're coming.
I look forward to surpassing my mentor.
I appreciate it. Can you build the coalition we need to build North, South, and Midwest to pass a strong farm bill that really works for our producers?
I believe we can. I think in working with you all and you working on behalf of your constituents, I think that we can. I think there was a great progress made in the 14 Farm Bill. We know that we got a couple of areas that felt left out. We've talked about those today, and I think we can get ahead of that. And it's even more critical today in the light of commodity prices and where they are, that we get a safety net not only for our producers but also our consumers in going forward. So that's a challenge I look forward to, Senator. I'm confirmed to work with you all in providing the resources and enabling you all to get a farm bill that will be embraced by American agriculture.
But you agree it takes that North-South Midwest coalition to get it done?
Oh, absolutely, as well as our nutrition people as well.
Do you also agree that it's the heart and the soul, and you kind of were going here in your answer, but the heart and soul of risk management comes down to that countercyclical safety net, building on ARC and PLC, and then making sure we strongly support crop insurance as a risk management tool. Do you agree with that? And do you see that as a heart and soul of risk management for our
Certainly, absolutely. A well-run, well-managed, well-designed, well-administered program in that, I think, gives farmers a lot of confidence.
And then talk a little bit about the importance of ag research. You know, we've talked about the importance of trade, and I absolutely agree with that. But ag research is making such a difference in the crops we can grow, disease resistance, our yields, which lead to profitability. Talk a little bit about your willingness, and this goes back to the budget issue as well, but talk about your commitment to ag research.
You know, it's interesting. We talk a lot about high-tech manufacturing. I would submit to the President and anyone that our agricultural sector has been the highest tech manufacturing industry we've had in this country for several years. The phenomenal growth and productivity with less inputs and less water and better management, better soil preservation is actually phenomenal. It's really wonderful, and the basis of that, as you said, is not only good basic research in our land-grant universities and others, but the transmission of that information through our extension service as well.
Are you committed and willing to support the sugar program?
I have, as I mentioned earlier,
And certainly, I think you all have done a great job in the past in the sugar program, and for those who grow the beets as well as the cane. I think you all, they've come together with a pretty unified front.
And talk about trade. I mean, it looks to me like we're in kind of a new era on how we're going to do trade. Clearly, the administration likes bilateral agreements over, the larger group agreements, which can work, but really important that we continue to press the trade issue. How do you go about doing that as Ag Secretary leading the world of agriculture?
I think speedily. I think because our farmers cannot wait very long. The TPP had been around for a while and negotiated, but the bilateral will take time, and we just need to get about the business of selling U.S. products. So, if confirmed, my first stop's going to be at Mr. Lighthouser's office door. We've already discussed some of this, and he indicated to me that 80% of what he'd heard had been about agriculture. So I thought that was good news, and we just got to get on it.
And I think, obviously with your background, it's so strong in agriculture across the board, but clearly your background and your knowledge of trade, it's going to be very important that, you're a lead player in negotiating those agreements.
We hope to be, Senator.
Great to see you. Thanks for being here and for your willingness to serve.
I remember well, back in 1918, when Senator Joseph France became a member of the committee. He was a good man, very willing and able to work with. 99 years later, we have the benefit of Senator Van Hollen coming from Maryland to join us on the Agriculture Committee. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for noting that. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm the first Maryland senator to serve on this committee since back in 1922, I believe.
That's when he ended his service. He began in 1918.
And Governor, it's great to see you, and I enjoyed our conversation as well. And I want to pick up on one of the things we talked about, which is the Chesapeake Bay, which is a national treasure. It's also vital to the economy in the state of Maryland, having a healthy and clean bay, both for the watermen, the people who get the bounty of the bay, the oystermen and the crabs, which many people around the country enjoy, to our tourism industry, where people from around the country come to the bay because of its beauty, and the boating industry. And what we've worked in Maryland to do is work closely with our farmers to make sure that we have a vibrant farming industry on the eastern shore of Maryland, along with a healthy bay. And so the conservation programs are very important to our state and the Bay States, as many others. And in the 2008 Farm Bill, I worked very closely with our ranking member and others to create a Chesapeake Bay conservation program. That became very popular. Other states with water bodies were understandably interested. It became the Regional Conservation Partnership program. And our conservation efforts also rely on the EQUIP program and the Conservation Reserve program. My question to you is, do you agree that these are important programs that we've got in place that we need to continue?
Senator, I certainly agree, because we cannot continue the progress that's been made in the Chesapeake Bay, and you've articulated what a vital resource nationally it is, and certainly for the people who live in that watershed and around that body of water for so many reasons. But I don't believe we can continue the progress that has been made, much to the credit of farmers, agribusinesses, and others who've acknowledged that the runoff of nitrogen and phosphorus has damaged that. And hopefully we can continue by, again, the education and the national NRCS there, that we could continue that program. So I certainly hope that we will be able to, and even increase and continue the progress.
I appreciate that. And as you indicate, we've worked on a very cooperative relationship with the farmers in connection with this particular program. As stewards of the land, it's very important that we have a good working and cooperative relationship, which we have had. I do just want to say, as a number of senators have raised the issue of the proposed budget cuts to the Rural Water and Waste Disposal Loan Grant Program, I listened carefully when the chairman of our committee said that the president proposes and the Congress disposes, and it's great to have the chairman of the Appropriations Committee here as well as the chairman of the Subcommittee Appropriations for Agriculture. So we're going to hopefully work to make sure we address those issues. I can tell you 15 of Maryland's 24 counties would be in really tough positions if they don't get the benefit of those loans. And I also say I look forward to working with the chairman of the Appropriations Committee on the EPA budget. The Trump administration proposal wipes out the EPA's Chesapeake Bay program, which has had bipartisan support in our state of Maryland. So I do want to flag that issue. Senator Donnelly and others talked about crop insurance and dealing with risk. In Maryland, most of our farms are small and medium-sized farms, and especially with respect to specialty crops, some of the way the crop insurance is currently designed does not, fully meet their needs. So I just want to hear from you a willingness to talk and explore ways where we could modify some of those provisions to make sure we address the needs of some of those smaller, medium-sized farms.
Certainly. By the way, congratulations on your desire to be on this committee. I think Maryland, many people don't understand the value of agriculture to Maryland, but it is significant in that way. And your smaller farms particularly, the 14 Farm Bill recognized the need for crop insurance and specialty crops in many ways. I think that was a great beginning. Can we go further? I believe absolutely. If we look at how we can what we learned from the 14 Farm Bill, how we can continue to enhance that, and to make smaller specialty crops of particularly smaller farmers a viable alternative for them.
All right. Finally, on the food and nutrition programs, I just want to add my voice to our senators who have said how important that is to our states. And finally, Mr. Chairman, if I could just say that we have in Maryland an 1890 land-grant HBCU, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, that's doing innovative work. You know that our HBCUs have faced significant challenges, including maintenance funds and others, and I know you've worked on this issue. I would just like to get your commitment to follow up in a conversation to try and address the issue of strengthening the 1890 HBCUs.
I would welcome that. We obviously have those in Georgia as well, and I think I was pleased to see our president welcome them as well and make commitments about those areas. So I look forward to working with you directly regarding your specific HBCU.
Yeah, we have a particular challenge and issue with one of our HBCU, okay. 1890, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome.
Thank you,
Governor,
sir.
Nice to see you again. Thank you. My colleagues don't know, but during the Secretary Designate's time in the Air Force, Governor Purdue spent time at Lockbourne Air Force Base in Columbus, Ohio, now Rickenbacker, and glad you will always put Ohio second right after Georgia. So thank you for that. Senator Van Hollen had a couple of points I want to reemphasize and go to a good handful of questions. One is the importance of the Chesapeake Bay. A lot of those same exact issues apply to the Great Lakes Initiative. Sure. The president has cut it almost 100%, which is just ludicrous. Senator Portman and I and Senator Stabenow, all of us on the Great Lakes states. The irony, it was the Great Lakes states that really won him the election. And we have, I'm old enough to remember, Senator Stabenow's not old enough, but I'm old enough to remember what the Great Lakes looked like when I was a kid. And it's one of the great accomplishments of government and communities, and the federal government especially, to clean this up, and we can't see us backslide. So I would emphasize the importance. Chesapeake Bay is pretty important. Great Lakes, though, is the largest collection of fresh water in the world. Chesapeake Bay isn't even fresh water. So anyway.
I object.
You can object, but he's a new member. He doesn't get to object. Also, I want to emphasize and thank Chairman Roberts, his comments about ag and nutrition and the Farm Bill, holding it together when there's always pressures to divide it. I know that the governor has supported that too, but thank you, Chairman Roberts, for your statements about that, and the statements of Senator Van Hollen on the historically black colleges is really, really important. And I wanted Central State in my state particularly important. I know you've worked with Georgia's HBCU as governor, and that Fort Valley State University is an 1890 land grant. Thoughts, if you would give us real briefly, because we're running out of time and a vote's coming, what specifically your thoughts and ideas of the next step you plan to take in support of those universities?
Again, I was pleased to hear the president welcome them and commit to do that. I think you referred to Fort Valley State. They're in our adjacent county, and we know the work that they do as a land-grant university and unique niche programs there in the state. And I look forward. They've got a value to serve, and I look forward to helping them with the research, providing, asking them for particular research projects with USDA that has the opportunity to do that, give them an opportunity to compete in those areas and to listen and learn from them, as well as they can provide good information for us in the areas in which they operate.
And I appreciate your sensitivity to historically black colleges, unlike your soon-to-be colleague in the cabinet who said that they were about choice or something. When it came to black colleges, it was a rather peculiar statement, but that's not you. Senator Donnelly mentioned opioids. My state has more opioid deaths than any other state in the country. The repeal of the Affordable Care Act, there are 200,000, right now, 200,000 Ohioans that are getting opioid addiction treatment that are on the Affordable Care Act. I know that's not your issue exactly, although it's your party's issue and the president's issue. I just ask, if something happens and that insurance is taken away, as it would be with the House bill, for all those people that have opioid addictions and are getting treatment, I would ask you if you'd go back to OMB and the White House to protect funding used in the battle against opioid addiction in rural Ohio and rural America.
Yeah, I'm not sure you were here when I mentioned the great conversation I had with Secretary Vilsack. He was very proud of the input the USDA had in the SAD opioid. And the sad thing about that, as you well know, Senator, much of this is in rural areas of despair. So I will absolutely be an advocate that for the betterment. Obviously, USDA doesn't have the capacity to supplant everything in health care, but it does have an opportunity to help in that regard, and I would welcome doing that.
That again is why include my Republican governor, my colleague in the Senate, Senator Portman, have both expressed great concern about the Affordable Care Act and what would happen to Medicaid. 700,000 Ohioans are on Medicaid expansion, and those are, it's pretty amazing to me that a bunch of us in this body who get government-supported insurance, whose taxpayers subsidize our health insurance, that people in this body and the other house want to take away insurance for a whole lot of low-income working people. Those are the Medicaid expansion people, and I just needed to say that because it's such a big part of the opioid picture. Last issue, and I know you're getting impatient, Mr. Chairman, but thank you. I work with Senator Thune, the last farm bill and the ag risk coverage program. I mentioned that in our meeting, the ARC. The program protects against unforeseen declines when either prices are low or for production is low because of unforeseen circumstances, that people have a safety net, that farmers have a safety net. The administration's budget proposal included sharp cuts to the National Ag Statistics Service, which raises real questions about USDA having the resources necessary to collect the independent, unbiased price and yield data so that ARC can actually be implemented with the proper information. 1 in 7 jobs in my state depends on agriculture. That's why I'm on this committee. I need to know that farmers can depend on you. I know your specialty is not the same agriculture as most of the agriculture and the senator, the ranking members in my state. I understand, I accept that, but I just want to know that you will work with us and use your authority to make sure that we can find ways to carry out the ARC, the Ag Risk Coverage Program, and that you can help us. Second part of that question, short-term assistance with dairy farmers. I heard you mention them briefly, and I just need assurance on both of those issues.
Certainly. Let me just take the second one last. We've affirmed assistance on the dairy risk management, but farmers have to rely on the credibility of good